The Hollow Farm. When Margaret Willis moved into the quaint town of Hartville, Pennsylvania, she wasn't looking for much, just peace, quiet, and a fresh start. After her divorce, she needed space, something far from the noise of city life. The real estate had boasted a charming old farmhouse on the edge of town, surrounded by dense woods and fields that stretched for miles. It was called Hollow Farm. Locals said it was cursed, but Margaret didn't believe in curses. She believed in logic, facts, and fresh paint. The house, while weather-worn and creaking with age, had a kind of rustic elegance she found comforting. The first few weeks were uneventful. Margaret settled in, planted a small garden, even made friends with a friendly mailman named Eric. But something about the house didn't sit right. There was a cellar door nailed shut in the kitchen floor. The boards were old but reinforced. When she asked the previous owner, a frail old woman named Lila, about it, she simply said, "Best to leave what's buried alone." Margaret didn't pry. Not then. But at night she would hear the sounds, soft dragging noises below the floorboards, like something shifting in the dirt. Whispers too, unintelligible but urgent. Then came the photographs. Tucked behind a loose panel in the living room wall, she found a small wooden box. Inside were dozens of old Polaroids, black and white shots of people tied to chairs, mouths gaping in frozen screams. Some were children. All were dead. She called the police. The officer who arrived, Deputy Raymond Miller, was older, heavy-set, and strangely indifferent. He looked at the photos, shrugged, and said, "Old town legends. Probably fakes." Then he pocketed 2 of the photos before leaving. Margaret was shaken. That night, she drank 2 glasses of wine and couldn't sleep. By morning, her garden was torn to pieces. All her tools were missing, and a small animal had been nailed to her front door. When she went to town, no one would meet her eyes. Even Eric avoided her. She overheard whispers. The new one at Hollow Farm, she found the box, not long now. Margaret began researching the property. She discovered that Hollow Farm had changed hands 14 times in the last 50 years. Nearly every owner had died under strange or violent circumstances. The Willis family, no relation, had lived there in the 1940s. All 7 members disappeared without a trace. What the records didn't show, but what she uncovered in old newspaper clippings and yellow journals at the library, was far worse. The Willis family hadn't disappeared. They had been murderers. A family of them. The patriarch, Edgar Willis, was a former mortician obsessed with spiritual resurrection. His wife, Martha, had been declared mentally unfit after several nervous breakdowns. Their children, Elias, Ruth, Jonah, and the twins, Caleb and Mary, were known to local children as the Hollow Ones. They lured travelers into the woods, hunted them, killed them. Some said they drank the blood. Others claimed they kept parts. But no bodies were ever found. Just bones. Lots of bones. Margaret returned home and tore the nails from the cellar door. The air that rose from below was cold and wet, like breathing fog. With a flashlight, she descended the stairs. They creaked under her weight, the sound echoing off the stone walls. The cellar was deeper than she expected, more like a catacomb than a basement. She found rusted chains on the walls, a stained table in the center, and carvings etched into the stone, symbols that twisted the longer she looked at them. Then she found the pit. A crude hole in the ground, maybe 6 feet across, filled with loose soil and fragments of bone. And above it, a crude wooden sign nailed to the wall. "We sleep. We wait. We return. That night, Margaret dreamed of them. The Willis family. They were sitting around a long table beneath the ground, laughing, faces pale and eyeless, mouths too wide. They called her by name. "You're one of us now." She woke up screaming. The next few days were a blur. Her phone stopped working. She couldn't leave. The car refused to start, and the road out was blocked by a fallen tree that hadn't been there before. When she walked to town, no one answered their doors. The town had shut her out completely. One night the lights went out. In the dark, she heard them again. Footsteps above, around, inside the walls. Children giggling. A voice calling down the hallway in a raspy whisper. "Margaret!" She ran. Back to the cellar. The pit was open now, freshly dug, soil pushed aside as if something had crawled out. In its place, 7 empty chairs sat in a circle, all facing her. Then she saw them, shadowy figures at the edge of the room, tall and still. The hollow ones. Edgar stepped forward, no eyes, his voice like rusted nails scraping metal. "You opened the door. You woke us." Margaret screamed, but no sound came. Her body froze, muscles locked. The figures moved forward, slowly, deliberately. They didn't touch her, but she felt them enter her mind, her memories, her soul. When she woke, it was morning. She was in bed. The cellar door was sealed shut again, clean, like it had never been opened. Eric stopped by later that day. He smiled at her strangely. "Feeling better?" She nodded slowly. Something inside her had changed. A coldness. A hunger. By the next week, Margaret was in town more often, at the market, at the church. Friendly, even warm. People welcomed her now. And then, one by one, they began to disappear. First, a teenage hitchhiker. Then, an out-of-town couple. Then Deputy Raymond Miller. Each time, Margaret smiled a little more. Because Hollow Farm was never just a house. It was a seed. And Margaret had finally bloomed. Thank you for watching, but beware, some stories never truly end.